Hello, my name is Rochelle Camille, and this is my husband Thomas. He's joining me today, or he's joining us today, and we're going to talk about what we have learned about each other and about being married in general over the last 5 years. Now, we got married October 22nd, 2016 in Kitchener, Ontario. Now, on that day, it was a couple days after the first snow of the season, so it was cold. It was windy and it was cold. A little chilly. Now, before we got married, we literally had one premarital counseling session. Now, I don't recommend this, but for us, it has been a blessing. We have lucked out, or we've been blessed that a lot of the issues that we have encountered with prayer and us being intentionally submitted not only to each other but to God, we have been able to navigate with little to no arguing. Now, with that in mind, one thing that has helped me and one thing I have learned about being married is my tone. I've learned that Thomas is very sensitive to how I say things and also my facial expressions, and I'm still being delivered from my facial expressions. Matter of fact, my mother-in-law wants a video montage of all my faces. I don't even know all my faces, but apparently they're hilarious. Also, the second thing I've learned is giving him space to speak. Now, due to me, going to counseling years before we got married and God dealing with me, it was very easy for me to be honest and to know what I'm feeling and how to articulate that. For my husband, on the other hand, that wasn't so much. Honey, what's a couple things you have learned?
I've learned to be patient with her. My wife isn't always the fastest with getting dressed sometimes, or if we go out for a walk, I'm typical 6-foot Dutch beanpole, so I can eat up the kilometers very quickly, whereas she cannot. So I have to learn to walk at her pace and be beside her. You, of course, can obviously say that spiritually as well as physically. Learning to actively listen to her. Not just shrug off what she has to say, but listen to what she's saying and what she might actually be saying behind what she's saying, paying attention to her expressions, and like she said, the tone of her voice, and like that.
So, going back to that walking thing. Now, my husband, he loves being outside. I don't. You go outside because you have to, not because you want to, where I'm from. So that's something I had to get used to. My husband loves hiking, biking, swimming, whatever you can think about. You name it, that's it. So it's taken me a few years to even want to go hiking. Like, say, honey, I want to go to this hiking trail and let's do this. Taking me, I'm going to say 4 years. 4. This wasn't like, year 2, I gave it a try. I talked about it for 2 years, but I did not. So that is something that's helped us to be bonded, because one of the issues that we face while being married is our trouble of having like one life. We were 2 individual people kind of living single but married, not in the sense of dating and talking to other people, but just like hobbies, interests, work schedules. It was kind of, we slept in the same bed, we ate the same food, but otherwise we really didn't have that connection. So God dealing with me last year about going outside and walking and all these other things, it helped us to be bonded. It helped us to talk more, communicate better. And I turned out to like it. I've lost a few pounds, looking to lose a few more. However, that has been one of the things that we have used to be a connecting piece. If you don't know, I love to cook, and when I met my husband, when I visited his apartment for the first time, my husband literally had a dozen eggs that were like 6 to 8 months old. They were dried. It was, the fridge was empty, and I was like, what is this? But little did I know, he actually loves to bake. And he loves to learn how to cook. So over the last few years, I've been teaching him things that I've learned from cooking since the age of 7 and going to culinary school, and kind of reinventing how I cook because of moving to a different country. So that's another thing that it brought a deeper healing to me, that I had this person that I could share something that I love to do. And I appreciate that about him, that he's willing to learn and experiment and make mistakes and still eat the mistakes. Because, some of the stuff we've tried was like, no, like it was bad. Anyway, honey, what is something else that, that's helped you get through being married to me?
Getting her interested, knowing what she likes and what she doesn't like, and getting her, getting stuff that she would like, and knowing what she would like or didn't like. My wife does not like horror movies at all. She grew up watching horror movies. She does not like watching horror movies, so we do not watch horror movies in this house unless I have maybe specifically watched it beforehand, or I know the content of the movie enough in order for her to, I know that she will be able to enjoy it enough to watch it. Example that we had of this is I took her to go watch the movie The Dark Tower by Stephen King, which is one of my favorite book series, and when the movie came out, I wanted to watch it, and she wasn't so sure about it, but with me having to explain the plot, pretty much whisper in her ear as we're in the theater watching it, and then explaining it afterwards, we were able to go and watch that, introducing her to really old movies. My wife does not like black and white movies.
Hold on, that's not totally true. There are certain movies I like. I'm just not open to like the whole gambit of black and white movies.
Yes, but you are only open to those select ones, and we do not always have access to those ones.
Yes.
And I have a certain selection of black and white movies that I have access to, that I have to introduce her to, and I have introduced her to. By the way, Arsenic and Old Lace, if you can ever find a copy, go and watch it.
It is actually quite funny. It is actually quite funny. And he introduced me to Sergeant York. And there was another one. I forgot. It was another war movie. You will learn that my husband loves history, books, history, and war movies. I think that is outside of Marvel and those type movies. There has to be like a close second in the amount of books and movies that he has. So it's just that's what he loves. For me, I like things around culture, and I don't mean like when people say culture, like always like classical music and all these other things. It's more of the sociological effects of culture and decision making and those things. So when we are watching like documentaries, which is sometimes far and few between, he brings up historical facts, and I ask all these questions to kind of pick at, like, maybe there's more to that story. Maybe, like, let's look at some some material that's not considered mainstream or a tier one resource for historical documentation. Um, just to kind of like pick and deepen that narrative. And also to give voice to those that were what's the best word to say, erased out of history. Their voices were erased or maligned, whatever case you want to call it. They're voiceless.
We can turn an hour and 45-minute documentary into an entire evening.
Yeah, like 4 hours, because pause, talk, discuss, Googling things. There is not one thing we have watched that we don't Google. There is nothing we what?
At least once.
Yeah.
I've not watched something that I've not had to Google at least once, either for just general background information or a character or an actor or some other little piece of information that suddenly crossed our radar while we were watching that movie or documentary.
Yeah. So these are the things that we kind of have in common. Now, one thing I had to learn about my husband, and thank God, was his denomination. We have two different denominational backgrounds. I am a denominational mutt, I like to call it, Pentecostal, Apostolic, Baptist, and denominational. I've kind of swung in different places. And for a season, I was a little bit agnostic. So, just a little bit of everything. My husband was raised in the CRC, which is the Christian Reformed Church. Now, as my husband will explain, his education background and those things, one of the biggest differences, or two of the biggest differences we had to overcome, was baptisms and speaking in tongues. Now, for me, I'm used to speaking in tongues. I'm used to seeing that. For so long, if not dating, I wouldn't date someone that didn't have that. But I remember praying and God saying, He will get it. Just be patient and allow me to do what I do. And then baptism, because in his tradition, when a child is what we call christened, that is the baptism. But then later, as they get older, they do a profession of faith. And I was like, that's not good enough for me, because if Jesus got fully dunked in the water, we're going to get fully dunked in the water. So do you want to go into some detail about that, or want to talk about the day we both got rebaptized?
I'll talk about the day that we both got rebaptized, because you've already talked about the Holy Spirit and baptism. So I decided to get rebaptized by the church that we were taking part of at the time. We were living in Burlington. We arranged for us to be rebaptized in a lake nearby, which was very interesting because it was also the middle of October and the lake was a little chilly as well. So you're seeing a trend. We tend to like our big events during really cold things. So yeah, we wound up going there. We had the overseer of the church that we were attending participated at both our baptisms. We were at the same time, same place. My parents attended, and yeah, we went out and we both had full immersion baptisms in the lake.
Yeah, so for record, I had never stepped foot in a lake at all, and I'm stepping barefoot. And there's a really nice picture somewhere of my face of coming out the water. And this is not a pretty picture. I look horrified. And one thing about this baptism, this baptism was done with an apostolic church, which is a oneness church. Now, my husband leans more Trinitarian, and I lean a little bit more oneness. I'm not complete oneness because I understand Trinitarian beliefs and those things. But I do believe like everything is in Jesus' name. So for us, we kind of, our benchmark is what did Jesus do? How can we live to be like Jesus? How can we learn to be led by the Spirit? And we do not allow a lot of those other things stop us from, one, having a great relationship with each other, and also a great relationship with God. So that is big for us. So we don't get into a lot of those discussions a lot. We do, but it's just more of the history. Why was a decision made? How was it made? It's more kind of figuring out the pieces, because this discussion in general has caused a lot of anguish and confusion in the church. But for us, we know that we love Jesus. Jesus is our example. He is our Savior, and everything else, it doesn't matter. And that's how we kind of deal with our denominational differences. Now, just for a little bit fun, because it's a little serious at this moment. My husband, his favorite thing to do outside of just reading and researching things is making jokes and making faces, as you can tell.
If a Canadian tree falls in the forest, is it sorry?
See, and I don't even think that's a real joke. I think that's a dad joke. I don't understand it. I think it's funny and I think it's cute, but I just don't know. Now, you have something to say?
No.
You were finna do something, weren't you?
No.
You sure?
I'm sure.
Okay.
I was just sitting here listening.
Okay. So, what is one thing you learned about me outside of, me not liking horror movies? Something you was like, she didn't tell me this, but this is interesting. Because I told you about the horror movies.
Yes, you did. Let's see, what is that? You didn't, well, as one of my favorite sayings, as she knows, I like to say, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. I did not realize, coming from a white family, growing up around white friends, this lovely hair here, it costs money. It costs money, and it costs time. And she had told me this before we got married, and I was like, oh, okay, it's hair. All right, we'll deal with it. No. A hair and how long does a normal hair installation take? Give me an average.
That's not fair, because when I go to the salon, I'm with my peoples, and it takes all day because I'm talking. And I normally give up my seat for somebody else, unless I'm actually there for an all-day installation. And normally those are braids. And being American, I like my braids small. My beautician hates that I like my braids small. She hates that I like them that way. And also the fact that I won't keep them in for more than 4 to 5 weeks. That's a whole nother problem she has with it. But I will tell you about my whole hair journey later when it comes to moving to Canada, because there's things I did not realize, but now I do. But that's different. One thing I learned about you that I didn't realize is how socially awkward you are around your family.
This is true.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, because when it's him and I out together, is a different vibe. But also I'm a lot more outgoing when it comes to meeting people, depending on the situation. But my husband, when he gets around his family, is silent, facing book, no talk to nobody. It's that serious, and it's just if any group of people you should be comfortable around, it should be your family. But not in his case. He talk more around my family than he does his. So that's something I have to get used to. But I would love to say that over the years, God has been healing the wounds and the miscommunications between him and his family. So that's actually getting better. Is there anything you would like people to know about you or us in general?
No, we could say that for a later video.
What is it then? Because I don't know. You don't know, do you?
We can save it for a later video.
Oh, so this is my husband's kind way of saying it's time to go. Like I always end every video, I hope that you picked up some nuggets from this and you were inspired and encouraged. Remember that you are loved, you are heard, you are seen, but most importantly, the God of the universe and myself, we're praying for you. We look forward to seeing you later. And remember, click the subscribe button and have a great day.